To the next edition here of Spinio Live. Well, we got one of my favorite people in the world here in the studio for our first studio
and
event.
It's live.
It's live. We are going live all over the place. So today I wanted to try something a little bit new. We're pushing this thing out to not only LinkedIn, we're going to the Facebook page we have from Spinio, and the Spinio Facebook page is going way back. So if there's some people on there that are like, how did this happen? It's because I've revived the Spinio page from 2008. And we got Instagram, we got X, we're going everywhere. So I want to welcome everyone who's here. I'm going to load up. I have the little keyboard over here. So I just also wanted to load up any comments or anything like that. So we're going to be going live here. So I guess I should introduce Lisa Farris. Thank you so much for joining me.
It is my pleasure.
And I love that you're in the office or in the studio, our dojo studio here. So Lisa and I worked together a while ago. Should I avoid years or are we?
Sure, just avoid years.
So I was coming off of being an engineer. And I thought I was an engineer. I was a civil engineer. And then I got into real estate, started a real estate blog, and I started working for Lisa when she was at Realtor.com. So I know a little bit of our stories today. We'll be talking about real estate and some of that. But Lisa has spent most of her career at least adjacent to the music space. So I know we'll dive into that. But she's also an entrepreneur in residence at LMU. So, yes. And you've had 2 startups. And so there's just so many different ways for us to go with this conversation. But I guess to get started, I'd love just to hear you give us a little background on your marketing journey, if you can, and then we'll dive in.
Well, I was so fortunate to meet you as I was CMO over at Realtor.com, but it did start before that. While I was working in college, I was helping to book bands and market a club. It's probably why I ended up not finishing school in those 4 years, because I ended up doing advertising, and from advertising really got into music. And it's interesting because music seems like this really sexy business. I went into music publishing, and at the time, everyone wanted to work at labels. Had I known what I knew later on, I probably would have stayed on the publishing side. It's not as, shall I say, exciting as breaking records, but it was really where the money was, a large part of the money was being made, and still is very much till this day. And then after that, I ended up working for a direct-to-consumer marketing company in the music space or in the entertainment space. And we put bounce back cards inside of CDs for the first time. We amassed databases. We amassed a database of over 25 million active music buying consumers. And so when I then later migrated, and I will mention some of my the most incredible bosses. I will negate adding the bad bosses, because I've had a few of those.
I might have been around 1 or 2 of those when you were having a not so pleasant boss.
So Abby Konowich, who was a client at Music Marketing Network, who was doing some really innovative things. There was no market research in the music business when I first started. They didn't believe in it, and still, it is very much a forward-thinking gut business, but adding the voice of the consumer and adding a little bit of research really does help guide you. And so Abby, because he had come from MTV, television is very research oriented, started doing focus groups. And so we did all kinds of things really focused on understanding what consumers needed. So I joined MCA Records at his offer to do some really fun things there. I stayed at Universal for several years. I left in 2002, started my first startup, and then got a phone call from a VC that I was working with, who said, "Your little company's nice. Your content company's nice, but we just invested in this company called Realtor.com, Move Inc.
Yep.
Would you come and speak to them?" Which is where I met you.
Exactly. Oh, that was fun. And one of the things I remember, so when I started at Realtor.com, I was in the product side because I was still an engineer at heart in my head. I'm not heart, but in my head, I was an engineer. So I'd started this blog, and I remember thinking I'm going to be saying product, and there was no marketing department at Realtor.com anyway, if I remember right, or something.
No,
right?
not until I came in.
You came.
Yeah.
And then you came in, and it was like, Dustin, come over to the dark side. And I had been fighting being a marketer because I thought I was too data analytical, and like marketer just felt like salesy. I wasn't a fan of it.
But that was the perfect moment. It really was right around that time where we were doing all of those deals with AOL, Microsoft, and Yahoo, and it was the precipice at where data and old marketing came together, and it was really important. And by the way, I was head of digital marketing at MCA Records and Universal, and I really didn't learn marketing until you work for a digital only company, and it changes the face of how you do things. But you were an amazing addition to the team.
Well, it was a lot of fun. And I remember you gave me so much flexibility, because like I came over and even had a few engineers still tied to me, these guys. So we were still building things. Like I remember just building databases of celebrities. Like we had interns just go get a huge database of every celebrity address we could find. And then every night we'd run it against the Realtor.com database to see which new celebrity home came on the market, so we could do marketing against that. Like there was just all kinds of random stuff that I feel like we did so early. I mean, I remember giving that, deals to, like, we'd give listings to Perez Hilton and be like, but you got to link back to the Realtor.com version in your thing. And we had all this stuff like that. That was,
but by the way, that emanated from something that happened in music, which was there were influencers, and we did it differently. You took it to the next level by adding blogging around it.
Yep.
And so I started a team that ended up being about 40 college interns at Universal Music Group that would help us break bands. In those days, we were going on AOL chat groups, by the way.
I remember.
This was not. So when I got to Realtor.com, I said, we can recreate the same concept, but now blogging had just, blown up.
Yep.
And I remember a certain executive there at one point who questioned us and said, the only person who's making money from blogging is Dustin.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun. No, there were like, those are some stories that I remember just learning and just playing, because you had come from a area. I remember you said I had 40 interns in the past, and I was like blown away. Like I wouldn't know how to keep that many people busy, but you gave me budget, if I remember, for 24 interns. This is a story I always tell anyway. You're like, you've got money, go hire 24 interns, go do this. And then hiring, my first hire was actually somebody to manage the interns. That's how we got Alex Scoble in there. And so then I had somebody to kind of manage it, but we tried our best to get up to 24 interns, and I don't think we ever got more than 17. Like getting 17 college people to come out to Westlake Village was so hard, to work for a real estate company, but we were just always on the hunt.
You had two things against you. A, Westlake Village,
yeah,
beautiful area, but hard for people to get to if they don't have a car. And B, it wasn't music, it was real estate.
Yeah, exactly. But you would drop these stories of like, oh, when we did this for Madonna, we did this, and I'm like, yeah, like I don't, we didn't have that same.
By the way, we did it for books. Don Passman, who is still has the book on how to break into and how to run the music business, was writing some other books. I think they were some kind of novels that he was doing on the side. And he came to us, he said, can you help me break my book? And we did. We supported him as well.
I love it. Yeah, no, books are a blast. I remember one of the stories I keep telling people, because it kind of helped focus even how I think of marketing sometimes, is we were working with Jeff Steibel, and he wanted to come out with a new book, and he took a whole team of us, and he was like, I mean, I don't think he'd mind if I'm sharing this secret of his, but he took a team, there must have been 8 or 10 of us. And this is the summer before the book was going to launch. And he goes, this is going to be a New York Times bestseller. If anybody in the room feels like somebody else is making a decision so that this thing isn't a New York Times bestseller when it launches a year from now, like, talk to me. None of this should happen. Like everything. And so like, it really helped focus the team in a way that I've had other experiences like that, but it was like, so just cut and dry. Like, and then all of our marketing went, okay, like, is that going to help us get to be a New York Times bestseller or not? Right. And sure enough, he launched it and it was a New York Times bestseller, right, a year later.
And it's such a great lesson, because it is really about laying the foundation before it ever comes out, and doing your strategy and setting up your tactics and seeding the marketplace before, because you can't launch it and then think everything's going to happen afterwards, which is, by the way, same thing for a startup.
100% for a startup. So let's dive into startups a little bit here.
Sure.
So I believe you've had 2 startups
I have.
that you've started specifically, and I think you've even worked for a few others or done consulting and other things like that. What was the one that I remember coming to your such a cool offices downtown up, or at least maybe it was a place you were filming, but it was the Rock This, right? Oh no, get this. Sorry,
yes,
Get This.
Yes, yeah, we were filming downtown, exactly.
But give us a little bit of your startup journey as well. Like, what was your experience there? And we'll kind of dive into like what's worked, what kind of marketing, what systems did you put in place that worked, and what would you do differently is kind of where I'd love to go.
Sure. So my first startup really was it was a children's entertainment company, and it was completely based on all the things that I wish I could have done at UMG with content, but couldn't. More market research. And by the way, I want to give you UMG props. We did start a research department there before I left, but it wasn't an easy thing. It wasn't intuitive for them to do. So it was very research based. It was, developing content for audience rather than, putting something out thinking that you knew what all the answers were. And I think, as I've joked with you, that one was very successful very quickly. And we pivoted slightly, and I sold the business within 18 months.
Nice.
The worst thing that could happen to you, I think, sometimes is having a successful, quick startup, because you think,
I got this down. I know what I'm doing.
The second one was not as easy. It was a technology that shop-enabled entertainment called Get This. I was fortunate enough to have some visionary people at ABC who gave us Scandal, even though I wanted Nashville. Long stories about that. But I think some of the lessons learned were, you learn so much more from, the mistakes and failures. I think I also shared this with you once before, as I was going out to raise money, and you really do need a diverse team. Clearly, I understood the marketing part. I had to have a great CTO, and I was fortunate enough to have a few really good technologists helping us out. And we created some really interesting patents around audio listening to content and then serving up product. And our UX for the time was phenomenal.
I remember being very impressed. Like, it was hard because I wasn't somebody who watched shows like to buy stuff. Like, I didn't go, I don't look at somebody on Scandal and like, ooh, I want that jacket or something. But I remember,
what about a great watch?
A watch,
would you not buy a great watch?
But it's just not like, it's not where my head normally goes. But if I remember right, the technology was, didn't you have like your phone was kind of watching the show with you or something?
Yes, so it leveraged audio recognition.
That's what I kind of remember.
That was mapped to the show, which is why we did need to do it in the beginning. There's this awesome guy named Ash Patel, who used to be at Yahoo, who said, "Your product's really cool. I hate how you're approaching it." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Do you really have to do deals with the content owners?" I said, "Well, if you want it to be on first run, you do." He said, "Yeah." He said, I'm not going to invest for one reason." He said, "You're not being disruptive enough." And it is in those moments where people say things to you that you hate, but they ring in your ear later on. And you're like, maybe he was right.
100%. No. And it's what's that level of disruption in startups is so hard, because I had somebody come up recently who they were pitching their product here to the Dojo team. So they brought me on to go, is this a good marketing solution? Right. And the guy, I definitely don't want to name any names or anything, but it was kind of like, we are going to make marketers obsolete. Like, he's got the AI so that you won't need a marketing team, once you have my tool. And I kind of went like, okay, but like somebody still has to manage whatever AI you're doing. Like, and so I
want to meet this guy.
Yeah. And then he gave me the demo, and it was helping creating some landing pages easy and some ad campaigns, the Google ads and stuff. It was doing that, but it was far from like eliminating the need to have a marketer. You still even needed a SEM person to like manage the campaigns, right? So it's like, why do you keep coming back to like, because he was trying to be so disruptive in his mind, in his mind, he's like, I need a pitch that tells, these VCs that like we're worth billions and billions, but it was so disconnected from the actual product too. Like, it's a hard thing, right?
A very smart investor once told me, and it still rings true to today. Don't be disruptive just for the sake of being disruptive. Be disruptive because you are solving the problem and thinking outside of the box. That's where you take that fear away, which I think is great advice still today.
I love it. Well, I also want to say, if there's anybody out there listening and you have some questions or you just want to join the conversation, please say hi. Lisa and I are both looking at the little comments and whatnot. So welcome to join it as we get into the groove here. So I love it. What would you say is some of the primary like mistakes you made with the Get This that you would redo? Because I think you started to hint at some, like it wasn't disruptive enough, but was it a marketing thing, a product thing? Was it just not the right timing?
I think we were early. I mean, I think there are a lot of companies that feel that they were early. Um, I remember one of our board members said to me one day, as I kept trying to work with the networks, I still maintain that working with the networks perhaps wasn't the best decision, but at the time it was the right decision, because with that also came promotion.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great book on retail merchandising. And I think that we found out before even the networks did that when you have a promo or an ad that comes right after a commercial break, right after an ad that comes right back in from the show, it is the worst thing. It's kind of like if you're walking into Target, the reason why they don't put things right in front of the door, you'll see shopping carts and they wait, 20, 25 feet, is because there's a transition period from coming from the outside to the inside. It is the same thing with a show.
Interesting.
Coming back from a break into a lower third, people don't see it. Literally, it's invisible because they're still transitioning back into the show from the commercial break. And we learned that when they put that lower third of you can shop the show right after the break, no one saw it. If you waited a minute into the show, it responded so much better.
Interesting. And were you tying it directly to the, like, would it come when somebody like did have the watch that you done? I assume that's when you'd want to be throwing those lower thirds anyway, right? Like, it
was a reminder that you could shop anything in the show.
Okay. So that's right. It was almost anything, right? You had all.
Yeah, we did the actual product, and then we did looks for less because, Olivia Pope wore $5,000 Armani suits, and there are not a lot of people who go to work and wear $5,000 Armani suits. But the interesting thing was the reason why this show was perhaps not always the best was that sometimes people's arms would get cut off, and that's where you'd see the watch.
I love it.
The best laid plans of mice and men.
So it's the other thing you kind of mentioned being too early, and it's fast. I would imagine it's kind of interesting now to see, like, I just watched the OpenAI couple of videos they had. I mean, they're getting so good at picking things out of screen. Just the AI these days is getting so good at just doing what was a much more laborious task back in the day.
And in those days, we did focus groups with young girls at USC and asked them, when they shop their favorite shows, if they're shopping Gossip Girl, which was the big thing at the time, how long did it take them to find something? And sometimes people would tell stories. It would take them hours to find what was actually being worn on the show that they wanted to buy.
Although I guess that's also part of the fun for some of them, right? Like, knowing you did the research and you figured out, it's almost like you can make it too easy. Maybe not, but on some levels, like the core hardcore people are like probably, or maybe not.
I think there's a percentage of time. If it takes you 5 or 10 minutes, it's great. If it takes you any more
3
than
hours,
that.
yeah. And then I'm just going to say, because there's two elements. One, the OpenAI is doing such a fascinating job there with this. The second is you're seeing the shopping through, I think of it, I see the examples I see are often in China, where you have shows, but TikTok does it, where they are now, like, that stuff you were doing through, like you said, through the ABC, through the big networks, right? Now it is done on social media, and, billions of dollars are being made, which is really, that's also got to be quite fascinating. Now that I think about it, there's both of those elements come together.
I've always wondered why Amazon doesn't do more of it with some of the shows through. Listen, not every show is shoppable. We have to be realistic about what makes a show. Clearly, the shows that you watch should probably not be shoppable. You're not the market. But I'm surprised, though, that Prime Studios and Amazon don't do more together. But at any rate, we were a bit early in the game. We didn't feel we were early at the time because iPads had just come out.
Yep.
And that was really, iPads changed the way people shopped.
And watch shows. Like, often you're watching a show with your phone or your iPad, like, there too, right? Like,
oh gosh, the second screen thing was a big thing.
That was huge around that time. I totally remember.
Exactly.
So we have Nathan here asking something based on your experience with the startup. With your startup that, shop the show. Do you think fashion brands today should try to work with huge enterprise level companies, or can they be more disruptive and smaller and independent organizations?
Absolutely the second. I think that they can be not only acting independently, but really guiding their way in terms of reaching niche audiences. That whole the beauty of direct to consumer is that you can build a brand that means something. And so yes, absolutely, Nathan.
Totally makes sense. So one of the other areas, so getting on to more, we'll come back to digital marketing, because why not? This is the world that I know that we're both spend a lot of our time in. And I can very much appreciate you talking about the importance of research and putting research organizations together, because you, more than most that I know, like, you'll put together incredible just marketing plans or reports, and it's like they get updated. Too many people start it, or they get like the outline and then they forget about it, right? But so where you're at now, you're doing this product-led growth and putting plans together. What would you say has been, part of what works really well? Like, what do you, I guess I want to dive into your experience. Like, what works when you're thinking, how do I go? I'll say the name, Soundtrack Your Brand, right?
Yep.
You guys, I should even give a little background. You do music licensing for, any retail or other or places that want to play music commercially.
Yes, we do overhead music, which I never thought I would ever, if I would have imagined working with overhead music, it was very much a legacy business. And when I met the CEO of Soundtrack, I very quickly realized the opportunity and the growth. And in fact, what has hurt this side of the business is the legacy players who didn't evolve fast enough. There's that age-old thing about how certain areas of business have a demise because no one innovates. And so we are the only innovator in this space. Truly, I'm not saying it because I work for the company. And so when I met our CEO, Ola, he had already begun to transition into product-led growth. I had never done product-led growth. And isn't that the beauty of digital marketing, is it evolves and you're constantly learning something new. Last year, when you first saw AI, I know so many people, when they first saw generative AI, they weren't sure whether they were scared or excited, or maybe a combination of the two. But that is what keeps our roles so exciting.
100%.
But there are also people who are really afraid of it and have decided not to adopt or adapt. And I think I think they will have no choice ultimately. But it is a critical part. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to, jump on the bandwagon and make everything AI. But just back to the product-led growth, I had not done that before. And I was recently asked, how would you recommend someone who wants to bring product-led growth into their marketing tactics? It's not a marketing tactic. It is a foundational structure for a business. Anytime I've spoken to marketers who were like, trying to convince my CEO we should be a PLG company,
it's too late.
Yeah. Well, and
or it's not going to happen. Like, it's not going to be successful.
Yes, it needs to be the DNA. The DNA of the company needs to shift to doing product-led growth.
And so when I'm curious, I think of product-led growth. I love the concept completely, in that, like, you want to build stuff that your users are sharing almost first and foremost, and that they're getting enough value add where they share it. Is that how you think of product-led growth? Like, what makes it product-led growth?
So it's being customer centric. It is creating your product to be so great that it sells itself. And so it's less about trying to figure out what is the sales tactic, what is the sales messaging, and all of those things are part of it, but it is product first, and having a free or freemium, either a free trial or a freemium piece, so that you can allow users to experience it, fall in love with it, and then share it. Now, the virality piece of product-led growth, of sharing, really works well for certain things. Calendly, Zoom, you're with someone on Zoom or you're with someone on Calendly, and they're, oh, that's really cool, I need that. Not every company has that degree of virality to it. We still struggle sometimes. Our viral piece is, if you use Soundtrack in the bar, the retail, the restaurant, the hotel that you worked in, when you go to the next place and they have constant repetition of music, or lack of selection, or terrible scheduling, or all of the things that we offer, do you say to the boss, you've got the wrong product, let me help you out here? I think that's really where our virality comes in. And you have to just be flexible in terms of making it right for you. But at its core, it needs to be that it is the product that speaks for itself, and you have to be very customer centric.
And it's really interesting to say that. So the first thing I thought about when you start talking about product like growth is what, like, it feels much easier often in the consumer space, right? Like there's an Instagram, no doubt. In this B2B, you named a few of them, the Zooms and things where somebody's on it, they're inviting you by the very nature of these
Asana.
Communication tools.
You use
I love Asana. We're in our teams in that all the time, 100%. So what else, what differentiates it? Is it when it is a communication, like even Slack obviously has a huge viral kind of still in the B2B, but I think some people lose sight of how hard it is outside of those kind of communication tools to get viralness, or am I missing it like in the B2B space?
No, the virality piece is truly a challenge, but I think the fundamental aspect of make your product so great that people want to share it is important, because sometimes people are afraid. They think that if they make their product open for anyone to try, that they're going to be giving away, something secret,
Yep.
or, you need to sign an NDA in order to be able to use something. Or, if that's the case, first you have a very different problem if you don't want people to know what the secret sauce is in your product. But we see it all the time in my industry. Sometimes people do make you sign an NDA before you download a player, which is completely ridiculous.
Yep.
And so I think people make it harder for themselves. Now, there are many B2B companies that I think we see it first and foremost because we're in music, but I think there are many B2B companies, even though you're selling to another business, there is a person there. And very often those people act like consumers, even if they're buying something that is business. And so you need to realize when that is happening.
Those hooks are really interesting. And you had me thinking back when I was like at Credibility Corp, D&B Credibility Corp, and we were marketing to small businesses. We really put on our consumer hat often. Like you had to treat somebody who's might have a couple of staff members, but might not. They might just be a solo practitioner. I want to say entrepreneur, but sometimes they've been running the business for 20 years and they're still solo, an accountant or somebody, right? But like they're worried about their business credit, and we get it. And for us, like one of the big turning points was when we created Credit Signal, which was a free tool. Anyone could come in and you would just get alerts on changes in your credit score. And, it was quite interesting because we didn't even make it like a free trial. You just got it kind of forever when you signed up. And it meant that we got to count all those people even as customers, which was kind of a little bit bizarre. It's a lingo term more than anything else, but we have, we've signed on, I forgot it was 600,000 customers in the first 2 or 3 years of having this new product, and we would upsell them. But, there's ways. I wouldn't call that product led growth by any means. So it's a different bit, but there's a certain B2B world. Sometimes I was going to say, you just need a different angle sometimes that other people aren't using when you're in this B2B space.
Well, let's go back to our real estate days. Here we were trying to get people to use realtor.com, and then that Zillow thing shows up. And really Zillow, I mean,
I remember
we used to refer to it as real estate porn.
Yeah.
A third of the people who went to realtor.com were not in the market to buy a house. They might have been figuring out, I don't know, should I buy? What's the house down the street that just went up? It's people looking at real estate. It's sexy. It's fun.
And just to see what your neighbor paid or what their house is worth.
Absolutely.
100%.
Absolutely. And when you can see what the value was, that changed everything. But remember, we were afraid to do it at that point.
I remember being in those conversations, and it was
because it was going to disintermediate realtors.
But what's going to happen? And for me, I mean, the funny part, I got into real estate because I had bought a house and I thought this whole thing is screwed up. The 3% on either side commission. This is the dumbest thing ever. And so I started blogging about it. And next thing I knew, I was like, well, maybe I should my ex-wife was looking for work. And I'm like, you should get into real estate. People just make stupid money. They get 3% for doing no work whatsoever. And then she started going, and I was started a blog about it. And then I created this blog about like real estate. I was like, well, like you could fight the system, or maybe we just like go figure out a way to like, this is just dumb. The whole system seems so screwed up. And that's why it's kind of fascinating that 20 years later, almost, it's finally actually the lawsuits have finally panned out, but it took 20 years.
Yes.
I thought that was a 1 or 2 year away process where the whole industry was going to be screwed up back when I started blogging in 2004.
But I think Zillow was such a great example of everyone was afraid. We were giving information out. And rather, what we learn is that an educated customer, whether they're a consumer or a B2B service, an educated customer actually helps make the market better, smarter, more efficient. They were so afraid that, oh my gosh, if you tell someone what their house might be worth, they may not call us.
Oh,
there's still a lot of reasons for people to call you.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. They can't do the transaction. Very few people want to do a big transaction themselves. They want that comfort of somebody who's done it before and can help make sure they're not screwing things up. Like you don't want to miss a form and find out that you gave your house away, or you did, like your mortgage, whatever it is, the title didn't get transferred to you when you bought it, or whatever the hell it is.
And you still need someone to come into your home and actually take a look at your very specific home and the features. But I think that is such a great lesson for startups, is that you can't be afraid. You can't be afraid to give information out. You can't be afraid to do something different. You can't be afraid that you need to protect your old business. The bad businesses are littered with people who are afraid.
100%. What I think I love the conversation here. We're in for a good half hour. This is normally we go for half an hour. So, but I do have one. I guess what would be a fun story you would have from marketing? Something you'd go, oh my gosh, this was just totally unexpected results. I think I'm throwing a curveball at you. Is there something? I know you have years. We didn't even get into I know when I tell people when they look at your LinkedIn, they're always like, she worked at the Recording Academy. She must have had crazy stories there. Or would it be the older, when you were just launching things?
No comments on
no
the Recording
comments
Academy.
there.
No. Yeah, that
was a hot mess, or maybe I won't say anything. I'll shut up. Sorry.
No comments on the Recording Academy. I think it was probably the most exciting time really was when I first moved to MCA Records, and I was given the leeway to really start reinventing things. And I built the second website. The first one was a landing page. And the importance of another example. I went to the CEO of Universal Music Group and said, in my last role, I built a database of 25 million active music buying consumers. Imagine if we could reach those consumers directly. Remember, music was sold through radio and retail. And we were just at the beginning of Steve Jobs coming in and meeting with all the labels saying, we're going to do streaming. This is really important. And we saw that he was going to be the next gatekeeper. Many of us saw that was going to be the next gatekeeper. So why not do it yourself? And I remember the CEO who said to me, that's interesting, but what can you do for radio and retail? I'm like,
you're not getting it. And I mean, because I wasn't involved in the industry, but I remember just his $1 a song or 99 cents a song or something was not liked by the music industry, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes,
that was
because we marketed albums.
But it was better than when Napster. I could be wrong, but that's how I interpreted it. It was there was almost a lesser of two evils. People are going to either get their music for free or we have to make it digestible. Was that what it was? Would you say the compromise? Is that how we ended up going that route? Is that did Napster put so much pressure, or was it just somewhat inevitable?
No, I mean, it definitely was an evolution. There are still people who, and you have to give creators their due. They create a body of work. An album is a process that creators look at as a moment in time or a moments in time that they create their body of work that sometimes shouldn't be separated. There's also a singles business. So it really depends. I think having the flexibility is important. I had always believed that can we have this kind of new digital EP where does it have to be 20 songs or one? Is there something in the middle?
Yep.
That's a 5-song bundle that we could have done. Didn't go over well with the people at the time. But at the end of the day, barring the fact that, of the issue with CDs, companies were making more money than ever. And now they really are making more money than ever. But again, it was fear and I want to clear up one thing. People were like, oh, they're the dinosaurs in the music business. Yes, there were some. I worked with a group of people led by the head of business affairs, Larry Kenswell, who was another awesome boss and great leader, very visionary. A gentleman by the name of Albie Galutin, who was a record producer who oversaw the technology. And our first entree into this, Edgar Brothman said, we got to figure this out.
Yep.
And so we started looking at not to reject opportunities, but to take a look at it from technically, did it work? Did it make business sense? Could you make money from it? We were being pitched ideas all the time. We'd say, so how's it going to make money?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, of course not.
And was there a market for it? And that was my job. And so really I was in market development, not marketing, which by the way is a big thing in SaaS right now. People call themselves chief market officers rather than chief marketing officers. I know it's nuanced, but that is how they view themselves.
Interesting.
Is that their job is to look at the market, not necessarily just implement campaigns.
I love it. I love it. Well, anything else? Thank you so much, Lisa, for being on here today. I loved it. This is so much fun. I love that I'm having a blast with these Spinio live events, and I'm so thrilled you came on.
I'm glad you're doing them, and you are such an asset to Expert Dojo. I love what you're doing.
I love this whole dojo community. Yeah. We have so much fun at the studio, and I love that you've been able to come down and check out our studio, and that goes for a lot of people here. You're welcome to do it as well. That's all good. So I want to just say thank you again, Lisa, and we will be back next week. We have Mateo on from Ibambo next week. I'm super excited. We'll be posting that one shortly. So please continue to come back, and we look forward to lots more engagement over time. So thanks again, and goodbye, everyone.